Military equipment tends to be very expensive to manufacture. Because of that, it rarely gets thrown away, even when it's long past the point of being useful to anybody. During times of strife, the military becomes experimental with its approach to making weapons, equipment, and even buildings. Evidence of those experiments can be found all over the world if we only care to look. Join us for a tour of amazing and unexpected military finds. The First World War was unlike any military conflict ever seen before on Earth. It was an extraordinary time, and so it called for extraordinary solutions. Plenty of hardware was invented during that war and then never used again. Here are just a few examples. There's the gauntlet dagger, which is effectively an armored knife that can be worn like a glove. This leather and chainmail face mask might look like something from a private members club, but it was actually invented to protect British tank crews from metal fragments inside tanks. The Fletchet aerial dart is a projectile that could be dropped onto troop formations by aircraft passing overhead. Sticking your head out above the trenches was obviously dangerous, so many soldiers used something like this collapsible pocket trench periscope to take a peek at enemy positions instead. Gas masks of the kind we'd recognize today had been invented by the end of the war, but weren't available during its early years. If you were subjected to an enemy gas attack, you'd probably wear something akin to this ghost-like anti-gas helmet instead. These are all curiosities inside museums today, but they could be lifesavers at the time they were made. The decommissioned Soviet submarine base in Sevastopol, Crimea, was built to survive a nuclear attack during the Cold War. Thankfully, it never had to perform such a duty. The base is sometimes known as Balaclava Submarine Base because of the area it stands in. Balaclava has a long military history, most notably because of the Battle of Balaclava during the Crimean War. This is where the infamous Charge of the Light Brigade, made famous in the poetry of Tennyson, happened. The enormous concrete and steel base has been officially abandoned since 1993 and is now open to the public. The walls of the facility are over 180 feet thick, theoretically thick enough to survive a direct hit from a nuclear missile. There were sufficient supplies inside the base to keep the entire population of Balaclava alive for 3 years. Protecting the people was only part of its job, though. It's obvious from the name of the base that submarines were kept here, but it's thought that a large stockpile of Soviet nukes were once concealed inside this bunker too. It's an unusual tourist attraction, but it's a popular one. Speaking of formerly top-secret Soviet facilities, here's Zeljava Air Base in Croatia. Back when this facility was in use, it was known only as Object 505. Only those Soviet officials with top-level military clearance knew of its existence on the border between Croatia and Bosnia. It must have been an extremely difficult thing to keep hidden, though, because it was easily the largest underground airport in the region. Object 505 was a dual-purpose facility. It provided a strategic command center for Soviet defenses, and also housed a long-range early warning system capable of detecting any incoming attacks from the Americans or their allies. It took 8 years between 1957 and 1965 to build and complete the base, which cost $6 billion. Adjusting for inflation, that's more than $50 billion today. For their money, the Soviets got a fully functional underground base with 4 exits capable of launching fighter jets and enough room for 2 entire hunter squadrons. It could be hermetically sealed in the event of a nuclear attack and would have survived any such blast. The base had its own independent fuel and water supply. It might even still be standing today were it not for the Yugoslavian Civil War, during which it was deliberately destroyed to prevent it from falling into the hands of any of the factions. Why go and see one military shipwreck or plane wreck when you can see several in the same location? If you're into diving and military history, Jordan is the place to go. At the tip of the Gulf of Aqaba, you'll find Aqaba itself, a small fishing town with waters full of wrecks. Hercules C-130 is the most recent deliberate addition to the seabed here, having been donated by the Royal Jordanian Air Force in 2017 to serve as an artificial coral reef. Planes of this mode have been in service with military forces around the world since the 1950s. A little further along is the Cedar Pride, which many people believe to be the world's most beautiful wreck. The cargo vessel was sailing into Jordan under the flag of Lebanon in 1982 when a fire broke out aboard the ship. The vessel couldn't be saved, and now lays on the seabed on its left broadside. Miraculously, it's still in one piece. There's even an underwater tank in these waters for divers to check out. It's a T-42 Duster, a self-propelled anti-aircraft tank. Like the Hercules, it was sent to the bottom of the ocean deliberately in 1999 to become an artificial reef. It's strange to see weapons of war reused in this way, but the local marine life appreciates it. In October 1942, the American aircraft carrier USS Hornet was attacked by the Imperial Japanese Navy during the Battle of the Santa Cruz Islands. To this very day, she's the last American fleet carrier ever to have been sunk by enemy fire. It took almost 80 years to find the wreck of the Hornet, but a team financed by Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen finally got the job done in 2019. The vessel was finally found using a combination of sonar scans, information recorded by other vessels present at the battle, and photographs. The research team did such a good job with planning that diving robots were able to locate the wreck of the Yorktown-class ship on their first dive. Much of the wreck is still in one piece, with gun turrets still in place, and broken pieces of Allied planes scattered across the deck. Looking at the state of the damage, it's amazing to think that all but 140 of the vessel's 2,200-strong crew survived the attack and escaped. The Hornet is in too weakened a state to ever be raised, but it's a significant name crossed off the list of missing American Second World War ships. Sometimes the name of a place tells you almost everything you need to know about it before hearing any more details. This is one of them. It's the Highway of Death, and you'll find it running through Abdali in Kuwait. All along the road, you'll find broken, discarded military and civilian vehicles. Many of them have been here since August 1990. Back then, the road was known by the less foreboding title of Highway 80. 6 lanes of the highway connected Kuwait City to Basra, and so they were used by Iraqi forces when they invaded Kuwait in the first step of what would become the Gulf War. As coalition forces pushed Iraqi troops back out of Kuwait in February 1991, many of them became trapped on this road, which was repeatedly hit with airstrikes for more than 10 consecutive hours. Photos of the scene in the immediate aftermath of the controversial sustained assault were beamed all over the world. Ironically, when British and American forces invaded Iraq in 2003, they used this very same road as a way into Basra. If you want to get a sense of the scale of destruction that went on during the First World War, you'll find it off the coast of Ireland. There are believed to be more than 1,000 First World War shipwrecks in Irish waters in various states of disrepair. Some of them look like they only went into the water a few weeks ago, whereas there's virtually nothing left of others. There are German U-boats to be found down in the depths here, along with British warships, passenger liners, and even a few fishing vessels that had nothing to do with the war. All of them are now covered by the National Monuments Act on account of the fact that they're more than a century old, which affords them protected status. The majority of the wrecks are directly above and below the northernmost and southernmost coasts of Ireland, which were known as the killing lanes during the war because of the sheer number of German submarines active in the area. Some of the more famous or significant vessels to have been formally identified thus far include the SS Powell, the RMS Leinster, and the SS Chirippo, but many of them are still anonymous. If we move around the Irish coast until we're closer to Cork, we'll eventually find the wreck of the RMS Lusitania. This wreck is extremely hard to reach, so most of what we know about its current status has been obtained using sonar technology. What we do know for sure is that the ship was struck by a German torpedo on May 7, 1915, and was lost almost immediately. It was almost at the end of its journey when it was attacked. The vessel had set off from New York City and was bound for Liverpool, England, with 1,959 people aboard. Fewer than half survived. These detailed sonar pictures of the wreck were obtained almost by accident in November 2018 as part of the ongoing Infomar project, which started in 1996 and will run until 2026. The aim of the project is to identify underwater locations worthy of protection and to map the ocean floor. The project has thrown up more than a few surprises thus far, including the discoveries of chasms on the ocean floor that are twice as deep as the Grand Canyon. When we think of submarines, we tend to think of small, agile undersea vessels. That description applies to most of them, but there are exceptions. One of the most notable of those exceptions is this World War II-era Japanese mega submarine. This vessel is so enormous that a whole 3 bombers could be stored inside its hangar. The wrecked vessel, a Sentoku-class submarine known as the I-400, was sunk off the coast of Hawaii after the war and was eventually found again in 2013. Measuring 400 feet from one end to the other, this submarine is longer than a football pitch. It's thought that the sub was dangerously close to entering striking range of the USA before it was captured by the US Navy. They held on to it for the remainder of the war, but eventually decided to sink it outside Pearl Harbor when the war was over, because they didn't want its secrets to become available to the Soviet Union. The explosion that sank the submarine was enormous, but as you can see from these images, many of its internal fixtures and fittings survived the blast. Losing a Second World War ship once is unfortunate. Losing it twice is just plain careless. Nevertheless, that's the story of the Dernstein. The 200-foot-long steamer was on its way to Austria in January 1944 when it encountered a severe storm and sank in the Black Sea. That was extremely bad news for Austria, which was relying on the Dernstein to bring it the reinforcements it so desperately needed at the time. Divers found the ship and recorded its location in 1977. But when a follow-up mission returned to the scene in 2004, they could find no trace of it. It took another 2 years to find it again. It's extremely unlikely that the ship had moved, so the most plausible explanation is that the 1977 expedition somehow managed to incorrectly record the location of the wreck. From these photographs, we can see how badly the wreck has deteriorated in the 30 years between visits. The wooden cabins were largely intact in 1977, but by 2004, they were barely more than skeletal outlines. In truth, it's remarkable it's still here at all. Having been built in 1899, the Dernstein was already old when she sank. She was only brought back into service as an emergency backup watercraft. Evidently, that was a bad idea. People like to tell stories about great treasures that were stolen and hidden during the war. You've probably heard of the tale of the legendary Nazi gold train, said to be hidden in a secret cavern somewhere in Poland. Here's another similar tale. It's said that Japanese soldiers stole the Yamato Treasure at the very end of the Second World War and dumped it in a top-secret location. Legend has it that the treasure contains precious stones and solid gold worth billions of dollars. In early 2017, a team of divers claimed to have found the Yamashita treasure hidden in a cave in the Philippines, but wasn't able to reach the valuables. According to the divers, the entire cave has been rigged and booby-trapped with bombs and other deadly devices. The treasure takes its name from General Tomoyuki Yamashita, who's alleged to have ordered his soldiers to steal and stash the treasure before their surrender in 1945. Although General Yamashita really existed, he was executed after the war, and so was never able to confirm or deny the existence of any treasure. This video certainly suggests that the divers found something valuable, but could it really be the legendary treasure? Who knows? While the existence of the Yamashita treasure is open for debate, there's no debating the existence of the Amber Room treasures. The famous room, originally contained inside the Tsarskoye Selo Palace of St. Petersburg and made for Russian leader Peter the Great during the 18th century, was so named because of the enormous collection of gold, amber, and gold-colored goods that were contained inside it. The room was looted by the Nazis in 1941, and its contents have never been seen again. Polish archaeologists are hopeful that they might be at the end of this secret tunnel, discovered close to the town of Wegorzewo using a georadar in late 2019. The tunnel is protected by a hatch, and the archaeologists believe the hatch leads to a shaft and then to a network of Nazi tunnels. All they need to do is open the hatch to find out. But the hatch is obscured by a tree, and the tree can't be moved without local government permission. For unknown reasons, the government is yet to grant approval for the tree to be moved. That could mean that the long-lost Amber Room treasures are tantalizingly out of reach just below the surface, doomed to be stuck there forever because of local politics. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and enjoy watching new videos on my channel. Thanks for watching, and see you soon!